Okay. Before I start my talk, again, thank you for UAP, the chapters, the districts, and the organizers and the committee for the National Architecture Week for making this possible and for inviting me here. I'd like to recognize as well my colleagues, my ex-classmates, UAP students, UAPSA members here as well, and the architects here who's joined us today. So my topic today, I think it's very much in line with the now theme, which is future forward. My talk will be mainly focusing on my experience internationally, from not just consultancy but in real estate development, and then later on into government. So design insights, because I'd like everyone to have a view, or I'll share what I've learned from all the different point of views of design practice, be it when you're doing a design consultancy, or when you're working for a real estate developer, or when you're working for the government. I think the role of designers change once you wear a hat according to these different roles that you play. Just a short introduction. My name is Roy. I've actually been away in the Philippines for 15 years. I'm recently now back with the pandemic, and I'm actually teaching in the National University. But before that, 15 years ago, before I moved out of the country, I took my bachelor's of architecture, science in architecture in UST, and then I've worked for a short internship here in the Philippines before I moved to Singapore to pursue my Master's of Arts in Urban Design in the National University of Singapore. Actually, the second speaker, we also took the same master's degree in Singapore, Mark. So I think we'll be sharing both of our experiences and knowledge that we got overseas. Immediately after school, with my master's, I actually worked with the National University of Singapore Consultancy. So the university has a consultancy arm, which was mentored by the head of the School of the Design and Environment and the head of the Urban Design Program. So I've worked with them. I'll later on showcase the project. Then after that, I worked with Surbana Jurong Singapore as a consultant. So Surbana Jurong is kind of the Singapore's Singapore government's consultancy arm. So if a country overseas, say for my experience in the Middle East, would like to model their urban planning and development to Singapore, Surbana Jurong is the one being sent to manage all these government-to-government projects. After that, I moved to real estate development after consultancy. So I worked with two large real estate development developers in the Middle East, Qatari Diyar in Qatar, which ranked the top 1 private real estate company in the Middle East by Forbes in 2016. And Dubai Properties as head of the design and the master planning, top 2 Middle East by Forbes in 2016. So when I worked in these companies, I was exposed to a lot of very fast-paced projects. I think you're very aware with how quick Middle East shapes their environment. So they think of a building, they think of a plan, and then in 6 months you have a new skyscraper or a new tourist attraction. After that, I moved back again to Singapore with CFLD International as the director of their urban planning projects, managing the master plan of their new cities and with industrial cities here in Southeast Asia region, such as in Vietnam, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. Last year during the pandemic, I was lucky enough to be a master planning advisor to one of the mega projects, giga projects in Saudi Arabia, the Diriyah Gate project, which is the birthplace of the kingdom. So in my practice in 15 years, I've been lucky enough to get exposed to different international settings, different projects, different clients, different cultures, from Asia to Middle East to Africa. So a lot of these, I've worked with different from people from different backgrounds, different fields, different culture, different expertise. So I'm hoping that in this talk, I'd just like to share the things that I've learned working internationally. More importantly, working with different people, different culture, with different roles as a consultant, as a developer, and as a government, as part of the government who's implementing projects. So I'd just like to start with this thought: design is subjective. How you appreciate design or how you view design really depends on who's viewing it. So thereby, agreeing whether a design is good or not, it's quite difficult. More importantly, it's more difficult in an international setting because, as I've said, there's a layer of culture, there's a layer of professional background, there's a layer of different backgrounds of all the people who's viewing it or your design. So design is very subjective. Sometimes what I've learned is that design, for some, a good design is the outcome of a good design process. So for example, they say it's 6 because, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the process. And then, 6 is the outcome of that process leading to number 6. To some, for the same looking number is actually a 9. And sometimes, design, especially in real estate, design is viewed as kind of an artful packaging of a business plan or a government vision. So when a government or a developer announces the project or design, very rare that they would talk about the quality or the process that went into the design. They would just flash this beautiful picture as known by everyone, the beautiful picture or the grand perspective, as a kind of an artful packaging of a successful business plan or a government vision. So it is, in result, it's like a fruition of a successful business plan or a vision. But I think what I've learned in design, working as a consultant, as a developer, and later on with the government, our roles, our designer, is to really bring everyone on the same side. It's not about it's a 6 or it's a 9. It's really about taking people of different cultures, different backgrounds, different fields, and bringing on the same side so that they see from the same perspective. And I think that is a successful design. If you could bring all the different views and perspectives of people together, then that for me is a successful design. So the next part of my presentation, I'll just kind of go through with you my experience in consultancy practice and onwards, and I'll try to highlight what I've learned and hopefully share with you, in just less than an hour, the 15 years, what I've learned in those 15 years working overseas. My first project as a consultancy was this project. It is the Doha Airport City. So this won the Outstanding Achievement in Planning Awards in 2010 by the Singapore Institute of Planners in Singapore, and was shortlisted as top 15 future projects in World Architecture Festival in Barcelona in 2009. The project was inspired by courtyard development. If you could see here on the right, this is where the old capital is, Doha City. And then, that growth was fueled because of the international airport. So people started going to Doha, and the city started growing. Of course, this is in line with the discovery of oil and discovery of the natural gas. As the economy improved, Doha expanded all to the north to connect to the gas fields companies there. and to the south as well to where the oil companies are. So the whole expansion that happened to the north and to the south kind of left the central area into decay. So for this project, we've taken the inspiration from a very traditional form, which is a courtyard. It's shaped by the natural environment of the desert there in the Middle East. The way the courtyard is formed is very important to the communities, and the expression of the architecture, really centers on important family values of Islam and Arab culture. So just a quick background of what a courtyard has in terms of its elements. You have the sahan, which is the courtyard. You have the open space with the rooms around it. In the middle, you have the well, and around it are the rooms, the different programs of the house, and then a courtyard surrounding, or arcade surrounding the courtyard. So it's pretty much an inverted, as you call it, what we're used to, the American zoning with the building in the middle, and then there's no setbacks. There are setbacks, so the building is located on like an island on your plot. The courtyard is inverted, so there are no setbacks. The rooms are immediately to the lot line, and then the open space, instead of being at the side of the building, is in the middle of the building. This is, of course, in response to the harsh environment, because it's the desert, there's hot winds and the sun. That's why they've located a sheltered open space in the middle of the project to give some shelter from the hot sun and the hot wind. So around it are in the center, it's more of the courtyard where you have the well. So this is a very cool area. It's a sanctuary, it's an oasis. Around the courtyard, you have the rooms where you have all the different activities that adds vibrancy to how you use the courtyard. And in terms of the way they lay it out on the west side of the courtyard, it's where the heaviest massing is, or the tallest massing is. So this serves as a shade from the sun and the wind. Also, there's a very few windows and openings on the west side. So it also contributes to privacy. When we did the project, we were competing with, I think, about 10 international consultants, the big names in the international consultants. Definitely, this is a big project in Doha. So a lot of them have approached it in a very international point of view. In contrast to that, we approach it in a very local point of view by adapting the courtyard, which is a very cultural icon in Qatar. And we've translated the concept of courtyards into different levels or different scales of the master plan, wherein we've translated into the private courtyard, a neighborhood level courtyard, and the project wide or the main courtyard for the project. So for the private courtyard, we've designed new interpretations of the cultural courtyard into low and mid-rise housing. So this is a view of the courtyards that we're proposing for the residential developments. So if you can see on the right, this doesn't look pretty much like a traditional courtyard, but we've adapted how the traditional courtyard responds to the environment and provides a family space in the middle. So you have the natural ventilation of the cooler wind below, closer to the ground, and then using that cooler wind to cool the interior of the space. And then because now as it absorbs the heat, it goes up and exits the courtyard. Also, the massing on this area being higher than the courtyard gives shade. So it allows the families to use the courtyard as well. In a mid-rise setting, the different spaces for socialization, it's not just centered in the one courtyard at the center where you have the main amenities. We've had elevated courtyards on the rooftops, and of course their own private courtyards in their balconies or the entrances to their units. In the community spaces, we've taken the unit of the the low-rise and the mid-rise housing and residential, and we've grouped them in courtyard style clusters as well, to a neighborhood cluster, to a community cluster, wherein it's centered in the mosque or the amenities like convenience stores, supermarkets right here in the middle. So it's accessible through, just by walking within the courtyards. So this is kind of the view of the fabric that we're creating. It's a very traditional orthogonal layout with, as you can see, the courtyards and then the community center courtyard. The way we designed the open space is also inspired by, the carpet, the Bedouin carpet, and how the landscaping kind of uses the same pattern. Of course, the carpet symbolizes social gathering in the Middle East. When you're invited to someone else's place, they roll the carpet and you put pillows on the carpet, and that's where you talk. And that's kind of their living room. So mimicking that kind of character in the public spaces, we're hoping to, kind of emulate a social gathering on the carpet. For shading, what we use we've used calligraphy, so that the shades and the light that it casts on the shadow would have some message like peace, love, all of that, or some verses in the Quran. The main courtyard for the whole development is here, located at the central spine, and it connects 4 of the main features, such as the gateway, the mosque, and the souk. And these structures as well are inspired by cultural elements like the mabkara, which is where they burn the incense to symbolize welcome. Of course, the central area is where the Grand Mosque is. And on the northern part, you have the lantern, the Arabic lantern that lights up at night, to add some some iconic architecture in the cultural center of the area. Of course, on the northern part, for tourists, we have a world souk. Wherein it's a modern interpretation of the traditional souk, but you could see how the arches are carried over as a language of architecture. So when we finished the project, we did some simulations and modelings to check whether it does, still mimic that kind of environmental benefits of the courtyard. And we found out that it did. So we did some simulations of the wind, and then we found out how cool the internal spaces of our project is, because of the series of courtyards that we've designed. If you could you could see on the top is the solar heat gain, showing how we've put the massing to respond to the solar and shading as well. So here's the view of our project, and here on the right is, if you visited Doha, this is now the new airport, the Hamad International Airport. So I think with that, I'd say design is a process. You start with analyzing the site, the culture where your project is, and the final outcome of your design is really the careful step of how you produced your concept and how you solve the problems, be it environment, social, or for different aspects of sustainability. And really, design is a continuity of heritage and culture. I think there's a huge tendency for us to be so romantic about heritage and culture that we just kind of build or rebuild heritage and culture. But I think as architects, our role is to continue heritage and to continue culture, to learn what are the good features of an architectural or cultural element in that specific place, and then modernize it so that it responds to the modern needs of the people who's going to use it. Next one, I'm going to discuss design in real estate. So after my consultancy years, in Singapore, I've moved to the Middle East, as I've said, working with the two real estate developers there. And, my background when I was still in consultancy is this. We receive an RFP, we kind of request for clarifications for tender, we submit our bid, and then, hopefully the consultants are hired, or they hire us as a consultant. And then we go to the usual design process, pre-concept, concept stage, the design implementation. For me, my view of the design practice was this. Of course, it's not really the typical. So because what happens in the typical design process is actually not as smooth as that. You have revisions, you have outside of the scope, requests from the client, you have value engineering, project delay. But really, when I moved to real estate, I thought what I found out was this bigger picture of things that happen before a consultant is hired. The client has a land wherein you need to, as a designer or as an architect, investigate the development capacity. You have to help them with the feasibility of the project, writing the project brief so that you could send it out to different consultants. You have to shortlist all the consultants that you want. Then you have to look at the background of each consultant and try to pair which consultant could be good for this project. And then you have to score them, and then that all of that is just before you hire a consultant. Even after hiring the consultant, you have to deal with top management presentations, your design approval review for every stage of design, for concept, schematic, detailed design. You have to consider the other departments of the real estate developer, wherein they have marketing people who's asking you for marketing materials of the perspectives that they're going to put in their brochures, the model that they will put in the project launch. The legal department will be looking for a registration pack of the boundaries of your project and all of that. So it's really working for a real estate developer has exposed me to, as I've said, a bigger picture. There is a bigger picture outside just the design alone. And I think what really is very different working for a developer is, money is king. And when I first started working with developers, when I speak to my bosses, their business degrees, I noticed that my usual design language when presenting as a consultant doesn't work. Somehow they don't understand graphics, they don't understand concepts, they don't understand any of that. But I have found out that they actually understand numbers. So it took me a while to really what I call design in numbers, or to present your design in something that they can understand, which is profit, savings, and all of that. One particular project was was done with Dubai Properties. I worked with the consultants, Edge Consultants. It was a winner of the International Property Awards in Dubai back in 2019 for the best residential high-rise architecture category. So the project is located to the famous Atlantis, the Palm, and the tourist attraction Jumeirah district, where you have here the Burj Al Arab and all of that. So the project here is located on this site. It is the last piece of land that's not yet developed, and it's the last piece of land with a beach access. It's also the entrance to the Jumeirah district. So it's a very prime property. The project is a 40-story high-rise building. It's got its own private beach. And the private beach has all the amenities specifically just for these residents. So you have the sun lounge, the private beach access, barbecue, the gym, kids pool area, infinity pool, all of that. So this is a very prime and luxurious and expensive property. So all units have panoramic sea view. All would have balconies, and it is only a single loaded floor plan. The lifts or the elevators below are dedicated. So they've split the tower, the 40 towers into different zones. So level 1 to 30 has only 4 units per floor, while level 32 to 4 has only 3 units per floor, and then you have the penthouse. So it's a very exclusive and high-end residential development. So on level 1 to 30 here, you have the 4 units. You could see here, each of the units would have their own lift going down. So this lift is for that unit, and so on and so forth for the other lifts. That kind of private lift continues 31 from level 31 onwards, wherein these units also have their own lift access. Same with this one with 3 units, and the penthouse as well with all their individual units. So the penthouse is a loft. It's a loft layout. The problem is that after schematic stage, they found out that they were over budget, and it was severely affecting the viability and the feasibility of the project. So they wanted a review, a value engineering of the project. So imagine value engineering, a very high-end project, wherein 28% of the units have already been sold. So if you look at the sold units, it actually has frozen the rest of the typical floor plans. So you could see about 76% of the area that we're value engineering is already constrained because they've already sold the units, and we cannot deduct the area, or we cannot return back the payments while we do the value engineering. Also, when we sold them, the units there, we've promised a delivery date. So we're also working a very tight timeline, because by the time we've hit this stage, they were already building the basement. They were already done with the foundations of the project. So it has only left us with about 24% of a typical floor area to work to do the value engineering for the project. So what we did, if you could look at the before and after, with a very limited space that we could work on, we've tweaked the layout of the lifts, and we've opened up some of the areas. We've combined some of the utilities, and what resulted to that is that before they had a shared lobby for all the different lifts. So despite being a very high-end and private lobby setup, eventually they will have a shared lobby with limited views to the city, because it's blocked by service lifts, utility areas, and fire escapes. So in the new layout that was proposed, the lift lobbies were more private, and this area of the corridor is now more open to the view. So there's actually more light inside the corridor. Before as well, one of the penthouse units is using a service lift. So imagine if you bought a penthouse, which is the most expensive unit in the development, and you're using a service lift, it's actually not very ideal. So in the new plan, we've dedicated a private lift, and so we separated the service lift in this area, so it's not used by the penthouse. So with the very small area that we've worked with, we've managed to increase the efficiency by, we've increased the efficiency by 3%. We've reduced the built-up area by 4%. We've reduced the shear wall area by 7%. So these ones, it looks like they're small, but you're dealing with a typical floor plan that repeats 40 times. So if you repeat all these savings to different floors, it actually accounts up to a lot of savings in the area. So that's the view of the project, the high-rise project. With all those savings that we've proposed, the project actually got built. You can see here on the left side, it is now part of the Jumeirah skyline with here the Eye of Dubai, the Ain Dubai. So I think what I learned here is really value engineering should never just be a process of subtraction. It should add value. I think for us with projects, when the client says we need to value engineer your project, it's always we're very scared because we're always thinking about subtracting areas, subtracting materials, reducing the quality, and all of that. But I think as good designers, value engineering should not just be a process of subtraction. It should be a process of adding value so that the feasibility of the project increases as you also decrease the cost or remove the inefficiencies of the design. Another project is also in the same stretch. This is a high-end hotel managed by Edition Marriott. So it is a 300-key hotel, also a beachfront property. It's a very high-end operator. Edition Marriott is one of their luxury brands. The design of the interiors is very much curated and bespoke. They actually flew in their interior designer from New York to look into the materials, the finishing, the mood of the hotel. So the hotel, when it was originally designed up to schematic, it was sitting on a podium where all the amenities are, and then you have a tower on top. Again, at the same time, when it reached schematic stage, moving towards tender, it hit a wall. It was over budget. So we've looked at the efficiency again of the building, and we found out that the podium area is very inefficient, only at 49%. And even in the basement, we found a mezzanine. It's like, who uses a mezzanine on the basement? So a lot of these area we've considered, but there's also some restrictions on. There's actually a maximum floor area, gross floor area for the project. There's a height limit, so that means we cannot just add floors. Also, when we did this, they were finishing the excavation and piling is in progress. So what we did for this one is we've as I've said, we look at the podium. We've made it more efficient. We've removed some floors, especially the mezzanine in the basement. And then with that kind of lowering of the podium, it opened up the neck of the building, wherein there's a potential to add more guest rooms because we're really maxing out on the height. We cannot increase anymore. So by lowering the podium, we've opened up space for additional units. So with that, there were actually two options that we presented to the management. It's either they add 50 units or they add additional 11 units, specifically with prime views of the waterfront. So similarly, again, with value engineering, any design changes should be always net positive. I think when you work with a developer, design is actually viewed in numbers. It's either efficient or inefficient. They would ask, the efficiency of your building. They usually have targets, 87%, 90%, all of that. So they view design in numbers. And when you work in development, you need to somehow translate your design into numbers, and improving a design is a matter of, like an Excel process wherein you remove the negative efficiencies. And then when you propose a layout, it should be a net positive at the end. In my experience as well, working with these top developers, I've worked with some of the biggest names in the consultancy community, like Foster's, Zaha Hadid, all of these ones, WATG, ACOM, KEO, Edge. So I've worked with all of these consultants, and to be honest, being Asian and being somewhere in my mid-30s, talking to this firms like Western firms, there's always a challenge when you're there with them in a board meeting. But I guess, as I've said, design is about bringing everyone on one side. So when you actually talk, when you make sense in how you propose or how you view or how you review the projects that they've submitted, they would actually listen. So race, culture, age actually doesn't matter, especially in real estate development, as long as the numbers add up. So one sample project that we've worked was with Foster's and partners in Dubai Design District. So Dubai Design District is somewhere here, close to, this is actually behind Burj Khalifa area. So the floor area for the two plots that we were working on was around 4. When we reviewed the work of Foster's, imagine, telling Foster's, I think we need to shift some of your design. I think we need to move your tower here. No, it's a bit intimidating in the beginning because you're talking to someone like Foster's. But these consultants, they actually listen, especially if you back your critique or the review of their design in a very logical manner. So for here, we've told them, like, by relocating some of their uses, we've actually increased the premium of the residential areas. Or, for example, if we remove some of their high traffic or active spots, where on this area we could actually create a more quiet neighborhood that could sell more premium residential units. So we've managed to do some revisions, and they did actually that. We've improved on the distribution of the project in terms of the activities and the spaces. What's interesting about this project is that these 2 blocks right here are designed with one single basement. So it's a kind of a super block typology. So that's why it was very essential to fix the design early on and the mixes early on, because that would impact the amount of parking and service within the block. So if we move the hotel somewhere else, it will impact the service and the parking below ground. So these are some of the perspectives of the project done by Foster's. It's again inspired by courtyard, some shaded areas for comfort. In the Middle East, it's hot. All these landscaping and very tight areas for walking, so that shade and natural ventilation is promoted. Next project is a project in Morocco. This won the Golden Nugget Award for International Master Plan of the Year in 2017. I did this when I was with Qatari DR in Qatar. This was kind of a government-to-government project between Qatar and Morocco. They were developing this golf resort, a beachfront resort in Tangier in Morocco, so that it would contribute to the economy there. So here you have, it's a championship golf course designed by Tiger Woods. You have here, Hilton conference area, and then here you have a hotel by Kempinski. So it's a very high in development. Of course, if you look at it, it's actually very low dense. So it's got mixed use golf and beach destination with about 2.5 kilometers of waterfront. So it's got the world-class Hotel Anantara, Kempinski, Hilton. It's got an 18-hole golf course surrounded by apartments and villas. When we were about to finish the 300-key hotel, the golf club, the golf course, and the spa hotel, someone ran the numbers and found out that most of these expensive stuff we're building, like the golf course, the hotels, and the areas that we're going to sell later on, like the villas and the townhouses, we found out that we're actually only getting a small percentage of our amenity investment in the area. So that means you're investing a lot, building these amenities and features, but then you're only selling so less that a lot of the other areas you're selling, the apartments and the townhomes, are outside your amenity space or your amenity central area. So we've noticed that, and what we've proposed is to actually increase some of the units next to these amenity areas, so that we can recapture the value of the investment that we made. So we did some studies on how do we densify the master plan so that we can recapture the value. This is another project in Tripoli, in Libya. It's also the same issue. The master plan was had to be reviewed and redesigned because we had to recapture the investment back for the company. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that design, as you could see, it's most of the consultants. It's very graphic. It's very you can get to use a lot of these graphic styles to present your design. You can do a sketch of what it could look like, but eventually for the client, the design actually translates into this table. For the management to approve that design, they only need to look at this table. They trust the designers, the master planners within the company to make sure that eventually the project will look good. But for them, what they need to see is that does it add up? The feasibility of the project work. So we always hear this. The client is always right. And especially when it's as a consultant, sometimes we have to take what the clients say in terms of, we need to value engineer your project, or we need to change some aspects of your project. We need to hold the project for a while. So what I'm saying here, maybe the client is sometimes right, because as I've said, there is a bigger picture. So what we see as a consultant, as a designer, is only the design stage of the project. It's only the design stage of the project, and then there's always that bigger picture. Behind your design is a legal department, there's a marketing department, there is a top management looking at the numbers and the visibility of the project. Last part of my presentation is when I moved to the government side, wherein design is actually about the practice of authority in terms of design guidelines, setbacks, zoning, regulations, approvals, all of that. My first experience with the government was when I was with NUS Consultancy. This was immediately after, finishing my master's degree in Singapore, and I had no idea. I was 24 years old back then. And I was here, you see in this picture, I was talking with ministers of a country, of Maldives, and designing the new capital for them. I barely had an idea of what I was doing. Of course, I was being mentored by the head of the department and the urban design program. So the project here on the bottom right, you could see Malé City. It's a very small capital of Maldives. In fact, from one end to the other, it's about 15 to 20 minutes walking. So imagine that's how small, and as you can see, how crowded the capital of Malé is. That's why they've reclaimed some areas of the atoll next to it, and they've developed a new airport, the new international airport, the new capital, which we've designed, the phase 2, and here as you can see the phase 3, an extension of the capital area. So back then, in early 2000s, when we were dealing with the government of Maldives, we've set up we've explained to them the typical planning standards, where we set up the circulation, the views, the land use, the height standards, and the kind of the zoning standards. For me, when I was doing this, as I said, it was my first experience doing a large-scale master plan, more so dealing with the government. I was very design focused when I was doing this project. In fact, my mentors there, when we were doing the guidelines for the plot, we had to do some role playing. Like imagine you're an architect and you want to build this area. So we kind of check whether the guidelines would be sufficient so that we don't end up with architects abusing the guidelines, designing something that's not with the character of what we're thinking. So it's almost like, are you providing guidelines enough so that there's no loopholes in how you would like to design the area? So the amount of guidelines and regulations that we put were made so that the building form that we're going to get later on is actually as per what we've envisioned or as per the vision of the government. And back in 2004, this was the place. You know, it was very hard to imagine something that would come up in this area. They only had roads, and you know, it was pretty much empty. And now, you know, looking at, you know, the latest Google image, this is now. It's pretty much very developed. And actually, what's surprising is how close they've actually implemented the master plan, to the point, like, you know, like even like walkways, and garden design, they've kind of almost copied some of these areas. In fact, you know, midway 2010, when Google Earth was launched, and then I kind of like accidentally saw Maldives, and I realized, oh, like, you know, as architects and planners, we have such a strong responsibility. You know, it's not just about drawing something on a piece of paper, or, you know, just, you know, it's not like just simple design. They're actually going to build it. Someone's going to live in that city, and they're going to stay there with their families for generations to come. And that's when I realized how important architects and planners are in you know, setting the development, the future of a nation. Another government project that I did was in Qatar, with the municipality of Al Khor, which is the northern province in Qatar. You know, this is one of the pictures taken. You know, again, I was like 26 years old. You know, talking with these ministers, pretending, you know, giving the aura, like, you know, I know what I'm doing. We're going to help you with your urban planning in Qatar. So the project, as I've said, is in the northern area of Qatar, next to the industrial city where gas is, the liquefied natural, or LPG gas, is harvested. But despite that being so industrial, it's actually one of the greenest municipalities in Qatar. So even though it's a desert, there's actually a lot of farms in that area. And the western part of it is actually a UNESCO biosphere reserve, because there's a lot of habitat that's happening. So my first impression was not correct. Like, deserts are not all sand. They're actually very theming with life. You have mangroves, you have bird sanctuaries, you have farms. And when we went into this master plan, our duty was to guide the expansion of the cities, so that when they expand, they could still preserve and protect the environment that was there. So we prepared different layers of you know, implementation, starting with the municipality level, on how they would expand the residential areas, how they would preserve all the open spaces and the farms and deal with the biosphere, how they would expand their industrial facility, and where would be the main commercial areas are, like malls, strip commercial, down to neighborhood grocery stores. The area is actually a very old area. It was back in 1963. The area was known for just fishing and harvesting pearls. It was only when the natural gas was developed that the area kind of boomed, and the expansion was you know, very quick after that. So for the Al Khor area itself, when we presented to the public, you know, we did kind of a design charade or an exposition showing to the actual residents of the municipality. We've even put like FAQs, frequently asked questions, because people didn't know about what land use planning is, what zoning is. You know, they didn't know what those are. So we had to really explain to them what's going to happen with their development. The center of the area is the downtown of the town, wherein what we were planning is to reconnect the downtown back again to the water, because if you could see from the history, the city has always been connected to the water. It's only when, due to overdevelopment, that they've disconnected themselves from the water with a major road. So what we were planning is to reconnect people back to their culture. So it's about continuing culture. So as you can see here, we've realigned the road to another location so that the downtown spills directly to the water, giving the residents again that heritage that they have, that they were once connected to the water with pearl farming and fishing. So this is a view of the downtown, wherein we've preserved key heritage areas. We've done a traditional market space. We've reintroduced, highlighted the town center with group their government offices here. There's a park for the residents on this area. So there is a heritage walk connecting all of the heritage buildings within the downtown area. The civic center, where the new office buildings of the municipality would be, together with the Grand Mosque. And the most historic building within the downtown will be turned into a kind of an iconic landmark for the place. So this is kind of what we were trying to tell them, that currently you have the oldest building that you have on the site. And here in the brown area, there's actually a major road, of 6-lane road that disconnects it from the water. So what we wanted to do is to reconnect the old downtown to their heritage, which is the water. In 2006, this was how it looked like, if you could see, a very traditional layout of the houses, a typical kind of a subdivision layout. In between them are the heritage houses. So what's the recent picture, I think what the process that they've done, or the development that they've done, is they've started with the public park already. They've removed some of the houses here and retained only the heritage areas, now being ready and prepared to do the heritage walk development. So it's some developments take a really long time. For example, Maldives, before and then it's about 15 years. And this one is about 10 years. And design master plans really take some time before they actually get built. I think last I'm going to present is Business Bay back in Dubai. In 2017, this was one of the top 5 coolest neighborhoods in the world, voted by Lonely Planet. So Dubai, we all know Burj Khalifa. It's somewhere right here. This is how Dubai is expanding. But with the guidance of the king or the sheikh, they want to bring back the heritage of the creek, or the Dubai Creek. So they started with this creation of the canal that has made Dubai, the central area, almost like an island, because it's now, all the canals are now connected to the creek. So this is, again, no matter how modern Dubai is, they really want people to remember their heritage, that their development started along the creek. So they want to continue the creek around the downtown and the new development areas. Business Bay is here. It's next to the downtown area developed by Emaar. Here you can see Burj Khalifa. So Dubai Properties, the developer I work with, manages the development of this area. So they are the master developers for this site. And the redevelopment of Business Bay, is already existing with existing residential towers, offices. It started because of relooking into the area. Started because I said, they've reconnected the creek. So now the opportunity to have a yacht and water use in the area is now open. So we proposed for that, like marina and 10 floating homes. So this was done by U+A and Admaris, showing how the area could have a marina and floating homes. This is a view of the floating homes. This was, I think, back in 2010 or 2011. And really, the floating homes is something very new in Dubai back then. No one has really done the first any floating home back then. This was the first floating home that will be developed in Dubai. So it's basically like a ship, but with a house on top. So there are different units, different number of bedrooms. And, this is the actual floating homes that was delivered and was docked into Business Bay in the area. And this is the view of those floating homes with a view of Burj Khalifa. And really because of that, it started the whole idea of, let's look at Business Bay and let's see how much more we can improve the area. So we've looked at how we could introduce more waterfront activity. We have some markets, some more restaurants by the water, some new potential developments along the creek that could add to the skyline of Business Bay in Dubai. This was done by Nikan CK as a Japanese company. We've hired as part of like the visioning stage that we had for the reimagination of Business Bay. So I think for when you work with the government or a public project, I think it's very important to focus on the people. It's design, especially design public spaces, and this include infrastructure areas, because as I've said, developing a whole city or a new capital takes a long time, and you wouldn't have control of the architects who's going to design the private spaces, the commercial buildings. What you can have a control with as a designer is the areas that the government will spend on. So these are parks, these are the major road improvements, the public spaces. So I think it's sometimes when we do design of the new cities where we like to have that iconic architecture or the new tallest tower or the largest or the biggest or whatever. But I think what's very important is to focus back on to areas where we'll have the direct and lasting impact to the people. Also working for the government, expect changes, and change is actually an opportunity to do better, because the master plan is implemented for such a long period in so many years. Expect change, and every time there's a change, you could actually do better. Also, design is a legacy. It would last way after you die or you have your grandchildren. Your design will be there. So don't design based on what you want right now. I think you have to look into the future and incorporate as much as possible future proofing in your design. I'd like to end my talk with this image. I think maybe some of you have seen this. What's the difference between reality, equality, equity, and liberation? And I kind of imagine all these three different people as the different stakeholders. You have economy, you have the environment, and you have society. And sometimes when you work for a company, the reality is sometimes they value money more, or sometimes maybe they value society or the people more. So that sometimes it's very unequal. The projects that we build tends to be single focus. It's either just very, very feasible, but it's actually not contributing to the environment. So what I'm showing here is that maybe as designers, we have a role to not just make things equal in our projects. It's not just where we're putting equal focus on nature or environment or society. Our role is to really give equity so that the projects will be sustainable in different in the real terms. Sustainability is really about the interaction of the natural environment, the social, and the economy, and that's how you really define sustainability. It's not really about putting a green wall or solar panels. Sustainability is your ability to put all these three components together. And I would actually recommend that, if you have a chance to work for the government, wherein society is so much the focus of the government, leaving a legacy, a lasting legacy, work with the government so you understand how a project is viewed from a social standpoint of how the government would actually implement a project in the long term. if you have a chance to work in a real estate developer, wherein the project, the focus is very much on business, feasibility of the project, then you could understand that each of the design, the lines, the areas that create have a financial impact on the feasibility of the project. Work with the developer, or as an architect, as a consultant, we create beautiful designs that contribute to the enhancement of the environment. Where we have a chance to do a proper land use to balance development and the natural areas. So as a designer, I encourage everyone to look and to wear different hats. Wear a hat of a developer, wear a hat of a government officer or a public servant, and wear a hat of an architect where you're looking at design and the environment and the beauty and aesthetics. And it's really when you do all these things that you can, as designers, we can actually contribute to a real sustainable development. And thank you. And I'll end my chat with that. If you have any questions, just probably type it on the chat. I think there's a time for the question and answer later.